Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. Good to be back, and a good time to be back because Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris took the podium at the NFL Combine, and every time these two guys open up their mouths or a big story seems to drop. But I want to start with the biggest one. This is from D. Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who said the Falcons will only be interviewing defensive players. All 45 interviews will be defensive players, and they did not even bring their offensive assistants to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. Now, I have said on this show every single time, use every single resource on the defense that you have, right? And I guess that's what the plan is. But I didn't mean it like this. I didn't mean it like at the cost of completely not even looking at the other side of the ball. We're just going to be blind and have our blinders on here. And it's just another example of this organization being in way over their head, doing goofy stuff that makes absolutely no sense. I mean, we've talked about the offensive side of the ball on this show and how, yes, there's a lot less holes, but it's not flawless. Like Drew Dolman is, no replacement. We're not even going to think about drafting a replacement for Drew Dolman, who is probably going to go somewhere else in free agency. The right tackle, left tackle position, you don't know how much in the future Caleb McGarry and Jake Matthews are going to be. So there are still, future holes to be considered. And you have a rookie quarterback. You want to surround him with the most talent. To just completely say, nah, we're good on that side of the ball this far away from the draft, it's insanity, man. It's insanity. And I can't even believe this came out. But I can, because it's like every time these two times get in front of the public eye, something like this comes out.
They never fail. They never fail to make everything a circus. It's very simply, these interviews, again, they don't mean a ton. And this really doesn't mean a ton, other than the fact that it's another glaring red flag that the guys in charge have no idea what they're doing. It's seriously like something out of a Simpsons episode where it's like, whatever we can do to be the goofiest possible franchise, we're going to do. What happened to drafting the best player available that you touted around while you passed on Jalen Carter for Bijan Robinson, or Kyle Pitts, the highest drafted tight end in NFL history, over guys like Micah Parsons and Pat Surtain and Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell? Like, what happened to all that? Was that all just a fugazi? Is that just not a thing anymore? Now we're only going to do best player available on the defense, which in certain conversations, yes, please, that's what we should be doing. But it again makes it seem like this organization, particularly Terry Fontenot, is just making it up as he goes along.
Yeah, I mean, the best player available thing, this is a complete 180 from that. I mean, you're basically just saying, you're not even considering the best players on the offensive side of the ball when we were asking you not to do that a year ago. And that's what the weird thing about it is. You're like, we've been asking you to do this, but this is something that an organization shouldn't have to do to get their defense right. Like, you should be able to evaluate both sides of the ball. That's why you have offensive coaches, defensive coaches. That's why you have 50 people in the building to make these collaborative decisions that we always talk about.
And they love to, hide behind the process where the results haven't been what we want, but the process, we're sticking to the process. This is not sticking to the process. Because if you were, there would be the possibility of finding Michael Penix's blind side for the next 10 years, which would be replacing Caleb McGarry. Like, Caleb McGarry is fine, and we can certainly go into 2025 with him as the blind side, but nobody should be kidding themselves into thinking that guy is the long-term solution for Michael Penix's blindside, who has struggled with injuries, who we should be trying to fortify the offensive line, not just for 2025, but for the totality of his career. Jake Matthews coming to Atlanta was a saving grace for Matt Ryan. Like, that and there is a couple of guys worth talking about in the first round.
I mean, Caleb McGarry is a free agent after this season. He can also be cut, he can be cut
a little money
and save $12 million, not a little, $12 million bucks. So you can save a good chunk of change by cutting him and finding a rookie stalwart right tackle to protect his blind side. Like, at the very least, that should be on the table. Yeah. I'm not saying you should do it, because you're right. The defense does need a lot of work. There are a lot more holes. Caleb McGarry is serviceable, but it should be on the table. If we're talking best players available, that should at least be on the table. The fact that we're ignoring it, insane process.
What it tells me is that there is a clear message throughout Flowery Branch that it is postseason or bust this year, or we will be firing up, LinkedIn. We will be looking for new jobs next year, because if they knew they were going to be here in 2026, that is Terry Fontenot mainly, but also Raheem Morris, they would be planning in multiple years where a tackle like that would be on the table. Whereas Caleb McGarry is serviceable right now, so we're not even going to consider that, because we are more concerned about the task at hand, and that is improving the defense.
Yeah, and that's the scary aspect that we talked about entering this. We talked about this with Mark Zeno, because there are all those holes across the offensive line that you can kind of just push off to the next year, and then you can go into debt paying for now for the future. And if everybody's jobs are on the line, which we said, which everybody believes that's the case going into next season, you're right. These are the decisions that we're going to have made, and
small picture decisions that impact the big picture.
And that's why hanging on to Terry Fontenot was so scary. Yeah. That's the number one reason why, because you kind of have this lame duck GM that's going to go all in, even if this roster isn't properly prepared to be anywhere close to the Eagles. I mean, we're so far away from that you would have to hit, like we always say, a 12-leg parlay. Every single one of these 5 draft picks we have would have to be Pro Bowlers. Every single free agent signing would have to be a Pro Bowler just to get in the realm of the top teams in the league. So it's a scary sign. It's a scary sign. And I think that's the scariest aspect to it, because I believe that's 100% correct.
I mean, even just talking about outside of the first round, we're taking no offensive player. Like, we still need, a 5th round wide receiver to be that third guy next to Drake London and Darnell Mooney. That could work out. A flyer on a speedster, to stretch the field, or maybe, a 2nd round pick to replace Caleb McGarry next year, or Jake Matthews,
Dolman,
or Drew. Like, there are so many other things to consider when we're talking. This is such a goofy response to being like, oh, I guess we do need to improve the defense. No interviews for offensive prospects.
Yeah, and I mean, no offensive coaches there.
That is even what are we doing? They're still going to be doing drills.
I read this tweet and I'm like, is he trolling? Because I'm like, but it's just the kind of stuff that happens with this Falcons organization. Like, it's believable. Like, we're sitting up here talking about it as 100% fact without really having it confirmed, because I don't really need it confirmed. Like, they do this kind of stuff, this goofy stuff that makes absolutely no sense. But there's a lot that came out of these interviews. We're going to talk about Grady Jarrett coming up after the break and his future with the organization on the defensive side of the ball.